What's up, guys? So this is gonna be my video about the main card of the fights that took place on the 17th. Paige Van Zant against Michelle Watterson. I did my video on the prelims. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. There weren't many, marquee fights on the prelims, but there was some interesting stuff and some fighters to watch. So check that video out too. The main card was pretty good. There wasn't a whole lot of finishes in the entire fight card, and so for people who aren't hardcore fight fans, they might have been, what we would call boring decisions, but for people who just really like to watch fighting and mixed martial arts like I do, it didn't bother me. Decisions don't bother me unless the fight is just not interesting. And for me, a fight can be interesting if it's on the ground the whole fight. It can still be interesting, especially if they're trying to transition, depending on how their styles match up, what their martial arts base is. If it's a wrestler against a jiu-jitsu guy, that's interesting to me. The guy, the wrestler is going to be he's only going to use certain moves. Wrestlers have a different way of doing things on the ground than a jiu-jitsu guy. And the way that you would counteract the movements of your opponent are different for a wrestler versus a jiu-jitsu guy. So that kind of stuff is interesting to me. And so I'm a little more tolerant of those kind of fights. Now, the main card was consistent of the first fight was Alan Jouban versus Mike Perry. The second fight was see, I made a note. It was the second fight was Faber against Brad Pickett, Uriah Faber, and then the third fight was Sage Northcutt against Mickey Gall, and then the main event, Paige Van Zant against Michelle Watterson. The first fight of the main card was the best one on the main card. Alan Jouban worked Mike Perry. Now, if you've never seen Mike Perry, he's kind of a weird guy. He's trying to kind of make a character for himself. He tries to, he's super intense, and he's got his face tattoos, and he's just a big brawler, and he wants to swing real hard and take your fucking head off. And at the weigh-ins, he acts like he's gonna shake your hand, and then he pulls it back and just starts screaming at you. He's kind of a weird guy, but he got lit up. He got tuned up in this fight. He didn't get finished. Tough guy. But in the first exchange, Jouban fucking clocked him real good with a right hand, and from that point on, it just looked like Perry was in a defensive shell. It didn't look like he knew how to. It looked like he was trying to time one shot, and it looked like he just didn't know what Jouban was going to throw next. And so he was more worried about what Jouban was going to do to him than what he was going to do to Jouban. And that's pretty much how the fight shook out after that. I mean, Jouban dropped him. Actually, they both, in the first round, towards the end of the round, Jouban had been, after the first exchange, he hit him real hard. Controlled the rest of the round, pretty much. Perry wasn't throwing a lot. Like I said, it was obvious he was just trying to time one big right hand, and the opportunity never presented itself until he threw a head kick and caught Jouban with a head kick towards the end of the round. I want to say it was under a minute. He hit him with a head kick and then hit him with the left hand, and Jouban looked like he was a little wobbly there for a second. But then the round ended, and by the time the second round started, Jouban looked fine. So that was Perry's kind of shining moment, was that one kick punch combination, because in the second round, Jouban dropped him. He dropped him with a right hand and almost finished him. He almost got the TKO, but Perry's tough. He's a tough guy. He's got a good chin. And he got back up, but he just never established any offense. He never got any kind of offensive rhythm going. He hardly threw any strikes. I mean, the truth is, he was trying to time one shot the entire fight, and especially by the end, I think he wasn't even worried about trying to time one shot. He was just worried about what Jouban was going to hit him with next. Joban really mixed up his strikes. He mixed up his target as well. I mean, he was hitting him all over. He was hitting him in the head. He was hitting him in the arms. He was hitting him in the chest. He was hitting him in the stomach. He was hitting him in the legs. He was throwing inside leg kicks, outside leg kicks, body kicks, left hands, right hands, straight punches, winging punches, hooks. I mean, he was throwing everything but the kitchen sink of this guy. And, you know, give Perry credit, because he never went down again, and he never really got close to being finished, but he got tuned up. Alan Joban really looked good, and really tuned him up. And you could tell that Joban really wanted to win this fight, because he does not like Perry, and he was making it obvious throughout the whole fight. Every time when Perry did throw, like, leg kicks, every time he hit Joban with a leg kick, Joban would just go, just a little, like, he didn't say anything. It wasn't over the top. Just a little thing to just kind of dig in on him. And Perry just couldn't do anything to answer. So Joban won, and he looked awesome. I can't wait to see him fight again. The second fight of the card was Uriah Faber against Brad Pickett. Now, it's funny because I talked to my dad about the fight on Sunday, and he said, "God damn, that was like one of the most boring fights I've ever seen." And it's funny because it was true. It was kind of boring because Faber just dominated. Just every inch, every second of that fight, Faber dominated. I mean, it was the perfect fight, I guess, for him to go out on, because he controlled every second of that fight. He dropped Pickett in the first round with a right hand, almost finished him. He almost guillotined him. I mean, he almost guillotined him a couple times, and that I really was shocked. Or, well, I shouldn't say shocked. That's disingenuous, and it's not fair to Brad Pickett, who's obviously a legit veteran, dangerous guy. But I was surprised. Faber had 2 or 3 guillotine opportunities and couldn't quite sink it in. I mean, you got to give Pickett plenty of credit for defending, especially against Uriah Faber's guillotines, which are legendary. But I was just kind of surprised. You know, most of the time, if Faber gets a hold of somebody's neck, that's it. But I mean, like I said, give Pickett plenty of credit, because he fended off 2 or I think 3 guillotine attempts. But I mean, the verdict of the fight was 30-26. Which means that the judges gave the first round a 10-8 score, because Faber dropped him fairly early in the round and then controlled him on the ground and almost choked him out, beat him up. I mean, Pickett just didn't get any offense off in the first round at all. He got hurt early and then spent the rest of the round trying to survive. And so that was a 10-8 round. And the judges gave Faber a 10-8 round, which is rare. It's rare that actually gets scored that way. And all 3 judges had it 30-26. So all 3 judges agreed that the first round was a 10-8 round, which it's just rare. And it just kind of goes to show that the fight was just completely one-sided, and Faber just steamrolled him. Couldn't finish him, but steamrolled him. The co-main event was Mickey Gall and Sage Northcutt. Now, it's been talked about this week, and it was kind of obvious. The UFC is trying to push Sage Northcutt and Paige Van Zandt really hard, and they're trying to push them kind of together because I guess they're both blonde. They're both blonde white kids who look like Ken and Barbie. So they were trying to push them as like this kind of package, like, you know, watch Fight Night and you'll see Sage Northcutt win, and then you'll see Paige Van Zandt win, and they both got beat. So it didn't work out for the UFC, but Sage didn't fight terrible. He actually had parts of the fight where he was in control. In the second round, he dropped Gall with a right hand, and he showed a little attitude. I came out of that fight with a little more respect for Sage. He dropped Gall in the second round with the right hand, and then they had been talking shit back and forth the whole fight because Gall doesn't like Northcutt, and so Northcutt earned a little respect from me, just kind of sticking up for himself, and he had some moments in the fight, but Gall's just way more skilled than he is. Gall dropped him too in the second round with a right hand, but you could just tell, you could see that it was a perfect indicator of where they are in their skill sets. Northcutt dropped Gall and then couldn't finish him because Gall's jiu-jitsu and ground skills kept Northcutt from diving in to try to finish. He was leery of trying to dive into Gall's guard, and so he didn't finish him. He let him recover, and then Gall got back up, dropped him with a right hand, and dove right in there and ended up finishing the fight with a rear naked choke. So it just definitely shows the difference in their skill sets and in their well-roundedness, because obviously I would say that Northcutt is a better striker, but Gall is also a good striker with far superior ground skills. So, I mean, Gall's going to win that fight 9 out of 10 times. Unless Northcutt knocks him out clean, Gall's going to win, because Northcutt doesn't have the skills to be able to finish him. And it's just the way it is, man. I mean, it's the way fighting is. In the UFC, just because you're trying to push an agenda doesn't mean that a guy's magically going to develop skills that he needs. And it's the same thing with Paige. I love Paige. She's from Reno, so, represent. We got to back her. I want nothing but good things for her career, but she's not fucking ready for what they're trying to throw her into. I mean, look at these fights against... Okay, so the last fight she lost against Rose Namajunas, it was obvious she was not ready for an opponent of that caliber. Rose beat her up in every position, in every round, in every situation. Rose was on top, in control, and beating Paige up. And the same thing happened, much shorter version, because Waterson just fucking ended it, but the same thing happened in this fight. Every position they were in, Waterson was winning the position, and then when she took her down, Paige couldn't get Waterson down, but Waterson took Paige down in the exact same way Paige had been trying to get her down, an arm and head throw, which is you lock them up here under their arm, and then you twist and bring them down. It's it's very rudimentary kind of judo throw, and Waterson got Paige down, and pretty quickly thereafter sunk in a rear naked choke. Paige is just not ready, in my opinion, for that caliber of fighter. Waterson is a legit world-class, world champion fighter. In Invicta, she was the 105 champ, and she has had a career of winning fights. Paige is not ready for that level of competition, obviously. If you put Paige in there against somebody like Beck Rollins, no disrespect, or, Felice Herrig, no disrespect, she's going to win because she's tenacious. There are things about Paige to love. She's got all the heart and tenacity and toughness that you could ever want. But if you don't have the skills to back that up, and you fight somebody who's just as tough and wants it just as bad, but they do have the skills, you're going to lose, man. Your heart can't win the fight for you. It can get you through situations where you might have otherwise lost the fight, but it's not going to win the fight for you. And so, do I think Paige will eventually get to the point where she's a world championship caliber fighter? Yes. She has the heart to do it. She has the toughness. She's at the right camp. She's at Alpha Male. So she has plenty of good coaches and plenty of good people to train with, and I think she has all of the potential in the world. And I hope that she gets there, but she's just not there yet. And it was obvious. And it's the same thing with Sage Northcutt. He's not there yet. And they're trying to push them. Look at this. They were the co-main and main event on a fight that had Uriah Faber's going away fight. Uriah Faber's retirement fight was on this card. And you have Paige Van Zandt and Sage Northcutt as the co-main and main event. And then watch both of them get tuned up by people who are just better than them. It was unusual booking, kind of suspect booking, in my opinion. and the UFC ended up paying for it, because that's kind of embarrassing for the UFC. Come out and see these two blonde kids, and then both of them get fucking not only beat but finished. Both of them get finished the exact same way. Except for, you can tell who has more heart, because Northcutt tapped immediately and Paige went completely out. Waterson choked Paige completely unconscious. But in a way, that does show you that Paige is not going to give up. Paige will not give up until she's unconscious, or until the bell rings. And that's just the way it is. Rose beat her senseless. Her face was completely jacked. She was covered in blood. Never gave up. And just like this fight now, Waterson had her cold, man. There was no getting out of that position. She was never going to get out of that choke. Ever. They would still be there. If it was, you know what I mean? Like, if there was no time limit and you just never broke up a fight, like, they would still be in that same position. Waterson would still have her in that choke. But she never tapped. She's tough, man. She's got heart. I really hope in the future she can start putting her skills together and be able to show a little more. But she's just not ready for that caliber of opponent. I don't know why the UFC booked her like that, especially coming off of such a nice victory with the flying fucking head kick against Beck Rollins when she knocked her out. And that was awesome. And you could have given her another more winnable fight and let her build some momentum. Now she's right back where she was. I don't understand. I understand. Actually, I do understand perfectly. That's the problem. It's just because they're marketable. If you're marketable, the UFC doesn't give a shit, about your career path. They just care about what's going to make them the most money on this next card. And that's just the way that the world works. But it doesn't mean that it's not unfortunate. But, takeaways from the fights as a whole. I stand by the fact that I'm still most excited about that Paul Craig guy. He just looked efficient, violent, and brutal. And I can't wait to see him fight again. Michelle Waterson, what a big win. I think she's probably, if she's not a title contender at this point, she's one fight away. One fight away from being contender status against Joanna. But the problem is, I think Joanna would tag her up, because Waterson's not going to take Joanna down like she did with Paige, and Joanna's definitely the best striker in the division. Joanna might be the best striker in the UFC, honestly, but I think Waterson against Joanna would be a very interesting fight. I just think that Joanna would definitely win, but it's fighting. And so, no matter what you think might happen, something crazy could happen. So, that's why we love fighting. Faber retiring, that was bittersweet, but he couldn't have gone out much better. He dominated his fight, won 30-26, got a 10-8 round, and then, had a perfect post-fight speech where, he thanked all the right people and, thanked the fans, and it was cool to watch. He just seems like the nicest guy, and, what a great career he had. Alan Jouban looked great. Can't wait to see him fight again. And Mickey Gall, man. Mickey Gall just keeps climbing the ladder, although his post-fight speech was kind of ridiculous to me. Saying that he wanted to be Dan Hardy's return fight because he thinks he's a marquee fight. Dude, you're not a marquee fight because you beat up CM Punk. Everybody knew you were going to beat up CM Punk. Nobody cares. Same thing with Sage Northcutt. Nobody cares who beat Sage Northcutt. Brian Barberina beat Sage Northcutt, and Brian Barberina got his ass beat by the guy he fought on your card. This past weekend he fought and got his ass kicked. So it doesn't say a lot for you. You're not at that level yet. Don't fucking start pretending like you're a big fight for other fighters to come and make money off of. It's ridiculous. Dan Hardy comes back. He's going to fight somebody who's established, who's a veteran, and who has a name. You don't have a name yet, dude. You're just that guy. Oh, that guy who beat up CM Punk? Oh, yeah, that guy. You're getting there, dude. You're a great fighter, but you're not there yet. Don't pretend to be. That's basically it. The next fights, obviously, are the main of the pay-per-view, UFC 207. Ronda's big return. I really don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how I see that going. It really depends on what state of mind Ronda's in, I think. If Ronda has any of that old invincible air about herself, that could be an interesting fight. But if she comes in with anything less than that, she's going to get fucked up. Amanda Nunes is going to beat her ass. If she goes in there kind of mentally broken, which I kind of think she is, Amanda Nunes is going to fucking steamroll her, probably in the first round. Probably nail her with a right hand and then finish with brutal ground and pound for a TKO. If Ronda has that kind of I'm fucking invincible aura back to herself, then it could be a much more interesting fight. I mean, then it could go either way. I mean, Ronda's a bad motherfucker. Ronda's a bad bitch. But her striking skills are just not near the level of Amanda Nunes's, whereas Amanda Nunes's grappling is a lot closer to Ronda's grappling. Ronda has an advantage, I think, in the grappling, but not near as big a one as Nunes has in the striking. And so I think if Ronda comes out at all flat or unconfident, Nunes is going to light her up and probably finish her. And that's my thoughts on that. I may do a preview video for that card. It's a pretty good card, man. It's pretty stacked. I mean, the main event of the prelims is Johnny Hendricks against Neil Magny, which is going to be a great fight. And it's against two top 10 welterweights. So you can imagine how stacked the card is that fight is on the prelims. So I may do a preview video to go over what I think may happen in every fight. You know, one thing I want to put out there is if I do preview videos, I'm not making predictions. I'm giving my thoughts on how the fight is likely to go. Because as we all know, every fight can change with every punch thrown. I mean, any punch thrown can change the entire fight. And that's the way it is. That's why we love fighting. So if I do preview videos, I'm not making predictions. I'm giving my thoughts on what is likely to happen based on my previous observations of each fighter's skills and styles. And that's it. I'm not making predictions. Definitely not making predictions. But, yeah, I mean, there's not too much else to say about this card. It was a pretty good card. Not too exciting, not too many finishes, but definitely some good matchups. So I'm looking forward to the next fight. The next card. Yeah, that's basically it, man. Thanks for checking this one out. Again, if you haven't seen the prelim card video I put up earlier in the week, go check that one out. And I put out the video about the Cowboys game, and also a little bit of a look ahead to the playoffs, because the Cowboys clinched the NFC East, the #1 seed, and home field advantage tonight because the Eagles beat the motherfucking Giants. Yeah. So